Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And in this week's episode, I'm talking with Ellen, whose own food addiction caused her so much pain. Weight gain, yes, but not just that. Her food addiction, more specifically ultra-processed food addiction, affected every single aspect of her life. And in this episode, you'll hear how Ellen conquered her food addiction and why she and I don't actually like the term food addiction. We'll get to our chat in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. Come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration, so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_lifeaftersugar. Okay, so here's my chat with Ellen. All right, so I'm talking with Ellen today, who's in the UK, in Birmingham. Ellen, can you tell us a little bit about your background with food and sugar, especially?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Ellen Calto, and my background with food and particularly sugar is I'm a food addict. Possibly have been from the age of about 7. And I have a history of obesity to the point of the doctor suggesting bariatric surgery. Up until about the age of 26, when I read Dr. Atkins' book, and thought, oh, perhaps there's another way, and so started my keto journey, and I lost 11 stone. You'll have to convert that for everyone.
Yeah, that's 14 pounds in a stone, right? Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So that's a lot of weight.
Yeah, I lost 11 stone over the 2 years. And I've maintained that now for about 13 years.
Wow. Yeah. Crikey. And when you read Atkins, who, for those who don't know him, was more low carb than keto. I don't think keto was a thing at the time that Atkins was around. But I mean, the basic premises are the same. What sort of clicked for you?
So I realised there was a problem with food fairly early on. So I'd been obese from about the age of 7. By the time I left school, I was about 16 stone. I was very, very unhappy. I struggled with progressing in jobs. I struggled with relationships. I was aware that I was doing with food that perhaps not everybody else was doing with food, like getting it out of the bin, eating it frozen, still raw in the middle, doesn't matter, I need to have it now. Stealing food from people, rearranging the biscuit tin so nobody would know, going out, saying that I'm going to do one thing, but actually going to the petrol station to get more food, stealing money to get food as well. It wasn't a fun time at all. The doctors had put me on many diets, and dietitians had put me on diets growing up. They were fantastic. They were always low fat, which meant I could have rice pudding with skimmed milk and loads of jam. so I was in heaven. And low-fat yogurts with jam, why not? Again, I was in heaven. And each time I'd go back to the doctors, I'd have put on weight. But the feeling was always coming back to me of, well, she's getting it from somewhere. So the parents are saying that they're doing the right thing, what they've been told to do. But it must be my fault because she's getting it from somewhere. I wasn't the gatekeeper to food. We were doing exactly as we were told. Low fats, but still gaining weight. As I got older, they started sending me to commercial weight loss groups. And by now, I am the gatekeeper of my food, which is not a great thing now. I've got an income, a surplus income, and all I want is to be able to eat. And I do remember going to one of the commercial weight loss programs, and they had the specific red and green days. And I remember the green day where they said, if you cook the chips in a certain way, you can have as many as you want. I don't think they meant go home and cook 3 baking trays meticulously lined up so I get as many on the baking tray as possible. 3 of those, I'd eat the lot along with my meal, go back, pay my £5 the week after, and I've gained weight. Completely confused because I've done as I was told. I can have as many as I like. Moderation doesn't compute for me. Even now, the years, it still doesn't compute for me. So what clicked for me was learning about the Atkins, low carb. And I tried it out and I lost about 6 stone.
Crikey. How long did that take?
Oh, that's going back now. So in early 20s, that would have been less than a year. It came off really fast because I was a big girl. So it always comes off quite fast to begin with. Anyway, I lost the 6 stone. I was feeling fantastic. I even started doing better at work. We did this annual sports day thing at work, which first time I was able to actually get involved with, which felt fantastic. We came last, but it didn't matter. I felt great that I was actually being involved. And I'd go back to the doctors, healthcare professionals, and other friends and family. And I'd get the same sort of message, which was along the lines of, but don't deprive yourself. It's not healthy to keep this kind of diet up. We don't know the long-term effects. You could be causing yourself problems. You shouldn't miss out at Christmas and yada, yada. Eventually that message kind of settled in. So I started to reintroduce. And it was at that point that I realized I can't have 1 or 2 of certain foods.
Yeah.
It was all bets were off after that. And it goes from having 1 slice of toast in the morning to just bring the toaster into the living room, stick it on the coffee table with a pack of butter and watch telly and have the loaf.
Can I just ask you, what kinds of foods with Atkins did you stop eating? And, and that today, with your knowledge today, that made the difference in your weight?
So I stopped anything with sugar and flour in it, from wheat flour, rice flour, any of those, and carbohydrates as well. So I had a plan of eating that was meat, fish, cheese. I can't eat eggs, so I didn't have eggs. Vegetables, and at the time fruit as well.
Okay, so you ate carbs, but in fruit and vegetables.
That's right.
Got it. Okay, I was just curious because, Atkins has been overshadowed by keto, and it does sound similar to keto.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when I reintroduced the foods, after the advice of well-meaning family, friends, and professionals, all the weight came back on, and then I got to 20 stone, and I knew that it was going to help. But I couldn't seem to get back to doing low carb or Atkins. I couldn't stop myself from going back to those foods. And then the doctor suggested bariatric surgery. I didn't want any operations. I've been very poorly as a child. I didn't want to have to experience that again. And at that point was like the darkest point. That was where I was very isolated in myself. I withdrew from many people. I lost my job, couldn't keep relationships down. Spent a lot of time in my bedroom just eating crisps and chocolate with the radio on so that nobody would know. Um, and thinking about how to end it all because it was just so miserable with everything.
Yeah.
And then I just was researching things on the computer and learned about food addiction. And that was the click that you asked about, Netta. That was the click. That was the missing piece for me. I knew that low carb could work for my body, but I didn't understand the mind processes for somebody that was an addict.
Yeah.
And once I learned that was it. Everything changed for me.
And that's amazing. That is amazing. And in a way, sad that you had to stumble upon food addiction and that kind of information on your own, and that all the doctors and the professionals that you'd seen, including all those commercial diets, nobody ever mentioned food addiction to you?
Nope, nobody ever did. Interestingly, after 2 years of recovery, I retrained and became a dietitian. And I was looking forward to learning about food addiction within my undergraduate, but it was never spoken about.
Yeah, how surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it still isn't something that we can diagnose. It isn't something we can still diagnose, but people are far more open to it now, and they're aware of it, and people can identify with it and start seeking support.
Yeah, yeah. And are you saying that you can't diagnose food addiction as a registered dietitian? Because
It's still not recognised in the ICD-10 or the DSM-5 as a substance addiction.
yeah,
as behavioural it is.
And that is why you can't diagnose it, but you can give information to people about it.
Yes, I do. I still support people. We use certain measures that are out there for research, such as the Yale Food Addiction Scale.
Yeah.
We use those to help people with a way to identify the severity of their food addiction. And then we either help them from an abstinence approach or a harm reduction approach, depending on what they would like to do.
Yes. And now your personal experience, how does that kind of dovetail with your professional situation, like with your profession? In other words, your personal experience of food addiction, does that come in useful in your profession as a dietitian?
Yes, it does. And I speak about my experiences quite openly with the clients that I work with. One thing we do know from the addictions literature is addicts are more open to speaking to other addicts. And we see this within the drug and the alcohol community. Many of the recovery centres are run by people in recovery themselves. So it's quite different to the way that I used to work within the NHS, where we were quite separate. I actually share my experiences with patients that they get some sort of identification and that feeling as well that they're not alone in this.
Yes, yes, that is truly, priceless. And can I ask you, it's one thing to get the weight off, and as you and many millions of others have found, you can get the weight off, but then it comes back on plus, plus, plus. How have you managed to keep the weight off all these years? 13 years, I think you were saying.
13 years, yeah.
I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar.
Every time I reintroduce carbohydrates, the weight starts to creep back on, even if I was to consume whole sources, small amounts. Even now, I don't seem to metabolize it as well. Something goes on where I start to regain the weight quite quickly. So although I don't feel addicted to things like rice or potatoes, my body doesn't react quite well to them. So it's easier if I just don't eat them, and I don't miss them. I feel quite satiated with my proteins, fats and vegetables.
Yeah, so can you tell us what it is that you do eat?
Yeah, well, I eat meat, fish, cheese, vegetables, berries, typically in season from my garden, which is quite nice.
Nice.
If I can beat my daughter to it. I drink milk and water. So,
Yeah.
it's I keep things quite plain, mainly because now, and this wasn't early recovery, but now I see my meals as just a way to sustain myself rather than sitting there. It's a joy to eat. It's a pleasure. No, I don't get my joy from food.
Yes, I
Any
think a lot
longer.
of food addicts have to retrain their brain to find joy in other places.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. And how often do you eat in a 24-hour period?
Maximum twice.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone from a point of always thinking about food to going, oh my God, it's 3 o'clock and I haven't eaten. And that, I can't tell you the peace up here to have that, where you're not waking up in the morning and before you open your eyes, oh, what's for breakfast? What's for breakfast? And then eating breakfast, fantasizing about lunch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm having a good day that day and I'll be eating breakfast going, I will make it to 12 o'clock. I will make it. I will make it. And then
Yeah.
falling at 10, and all bets are off too. Just the other day, I had this wonderful experience that I was able to capture. This thought had popped into my head. I was driving home, thinking about what I had to do when I get home. Got to put the dinner on, get the baby ready for bed, things like that. And as I was thinking about cooking and sorting out dinner, my head, just something in my head went, oh, it's too hot to eat. And I couldn't help but laugh out loud because in the past, it was never too anything to eat. Just
Yeah.
it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Even if I was ill, eating would help,
Right.
So to actually hear the thought of it's too hot to eat just made me so happy.
Amazing, amazing. It's like a complete transformation, not in just
Yeah,
in yourself, but how you see food. And I have a bit of an issue with calling it food addiction because I personally don't believe that it's an addiction to food per se, but to certain types of carbs,
you're
sugar,
absolutely right.
flour, and processed foods.
You're absolutely right. So there was a consensus that was presented not so long ago in May. And the consensus that they all say that we need to be saying ultra processed food addiction. Quite a mouthful, and I've got to get used to saying it. You're absolutely right. I don't feel addicted to my steak and my pork chops and
Yeah.
my bell peppers. I just, you're absolutely right. It's just a mouthful. I've got to get used to saying it.
I mean, I say this as an English teacher, we need more vocabulary,
Mm,
really, so that people don't confuse what food is with what these so-called edible food-like products, as Michael Perlin says, what they are, and that we don't, and that so that we can separate what's available. 80 to 90% of products that are available in supermarkets are not food.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Completely agree.
yeah.
I think we got to the point now that in supermarkets, we should start questioning why there is a health food aisle. Shouldn't the food all be healthy within the shop?
And
Why we have an
actually,
aisle dedicated to it?
yeah, and ironically, I find that even in the health food aisle, or at least the supermarkets where I live, it's mostly packaged foods and hardly real foods anyway. So it's a lot of hype and a
Absolutely.
lot of marketing.
Mm.
Mm. So, how has your self-image, your body image, just generally your general well-being changed since you lost all this weight? But it's not just about the weight.
Mm. I think more so it was about the mind. But you ask about my body. I didn't feel comfortable about exercising till I was about 12 stone. And then I started exercising. I still don't enjoy exercising.
Mhm.
But yeah, you know, um, body image wise, I can struggle with it. Um, More recently, I feel more comfortable in my body than I have ever done. So I'm quite excited to reach my next milestone birthday, if that's if it's the only way is up. Um, in fact, just yesterday I bought my first bikini, and I'm quite excited to to wear it. Nervous as well, so I need to just go out and do that.
Yeah, go
Um,
for it.
so body image wise, yes, I have my struggles. But it's far better than it was. I think it also helps having a little girl as well. So I don't want her to start worrying about her body, which is
Totally.
amazing. She's wonderful. Mind wise, though, I can concentrate better. Um, I'm not preoccupied with food all the time. I'm not clock watching for lunch.
Mm.
Um, I can hold a conversation well when food comes to be delivered at the table. I'm not distracted by what's everybody got and are they going to finish.
Mhm.
There are times where I don't even realize somebody's eaten something, let alone had something on their plate and they've actually finished it. And I've not even noticed, which is a lovely feeling. Um, I used to know exactly what was in the cupboards and in the fridge. Um, there was always something at the back of my mind that would always make sure that we'd never run out of something. And a while back, uh, my ex-husband had said, "Oh, we've ran out of," I can't even remember what it was. And I was like, because I hadn't noticed. I was so pleased that that preoccupation had also gone, that we'd ran out and had to go to the shop. Um, so it's more of that peace that I have around food. Um, Going to places that have food readily available, like buffets and parties and things like that. But the majority of the food, unless it's very good, close friends and family that will cater for the way I eat, I can't have most. I'm often having the trimmings and taking apart sandwiches. That was a real struggle to do that. I'd be the first one up in the queue, and I'd be rejoining before the queue's gone back down again. And to have that kind of peace where I don't even have to be the first one up anymore.
Yeah.
Um, or even at early recovery, being fearful of going to a place like that, because how will I be able to control myself? Maybe it's better if I just keep away. And now
Yeah,
not having
that's
that feeling
amazing.
at all.
Isn't that a
Mm,
wonderful sense of freedom and peace?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely indeed.
As a food addict, we'll use that term for now, but as a food addict, do you believe that once a food addict, always a food addict?
I think that's going to come from my own experience. You can
Yeah.
ask me again just before maybe in my 80s, before I die, ask me then whether or not these things still fleet in my head. when we look at the research and we hear of alcoholics who've been in alcoholic recovery for 6 decades, they say that they still get those fleeting thoughts that come back, or they'll go past a pub that'll bring back a memory or bring back a craving. They'll have a smell of something and it'll bring back that memory and that craving. They tell us that for them is still there, but they're able to control it far better than they would have done early recovery. From the 15 years that I've been going through I would say for me, yes, it's always going to be there. It's just those thoughts that pop in that say, you've had a hard day, so you should have some chocolate.
Yeah.
They don't seem as loud. They don't seem as scary. They don't seem as strong anymore. And more often than not, I can have a good giggle about them now. Go, we've tried that before. 10 out of 10 for trying. Maybe tomorrow. Let's see.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Sometimes I tell the people here in my program, you know what this type of cookie tastes like. You've had thousands of them. You really don't need another one just to find out what it tastes like,
And if they've been doing it long enough, it won't even taste the same anyway. Way
Absolutely.
too sweet.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like we
Mm,
tell ourselves all these stories, as a type of self-sabotage, which is totally human thing to do. But still, it's part, I think, of that whole recovery journey that for some of us is never ending. We just learn how to cope with it better.
absolutely.
Yeah. And you are an amazing role model for your daughter, let alone everybody else listening. What's the one thing you would wish for her?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Let's try. One thing that I would wish for her, I wish for her to find peace. I really do. As she grows up, addiction runs very strongly in my family: alcohol addiction, food addiction. If she's unlucky enough to experience addiction, I hope she can find peace with it.
Well, she's
I'm not
got,
sure how happy I am about that answer, Netta.
it
I'll be
sounds
honest.
wonderful to me. Sounds like you're an amazing mom and a role model, not because you're trying to be one, but just because you are one.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you ever
she's
so
a good
much.
girl.
Oh, I'm sure she is. And thank you for sharing your story and your vulnerability and your triumph. I think your story will really inspire a lot of people listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Netta. Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. And if anyone needs to or wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
So if they head over to the Public Health Collaboration website and look for Liberate. Liberate is the program that we run as a group for ultra-processed food addicts. And we're starting again in October, and it's an 8-week education course followed by a year support, all included. And we've got a beautiful community. We've put through about 100 people through the course so far, and they're all doing really well, and they all support each other.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I'll put that link with the show notes with the recording. So thank you
Thank you.
so much, Ellen. Lovely to meet you. Very inspiring.
Thank you, and you.
Such a powerful conversation with Ellen there, and such courage to say publicly that she's a food addict. And I think that will help lots and lots of others feel less ashamed, because there really is no shame in being a food addict, especially when the processed foods industry actually encourages the whole notion of cravings and, bet you can't eat just one? No, no, we can't, because the processed foods industry has made jolly sure that we can't eat just one. And they've also made sure that we think that their products are food. So, as Ellen and I were saying, the term food addict isn't really very accurate, and that's why she uses the term ultra processed food addict. But whatever the vocabulary we use, the fact is that there are way more people who suffer from this addictive relationship with these types of foods. And so If you do, you probably relate to Ellen's story. And if sugar is also making you feel like you're addicted and you feel stuck in this vicious cycle where you keep stopping and starting and falling down this slippery slope towards cravings and then feeling guilt and shame about giving in to your cravings, well, if you are feeling like this, then I invite you to check out my 90-day program, The Freedom from Cravings Formula. If you're at a stage in your life where you're ready to get rid of cravings, then as I just mentioned, my program, The Freedom from Cravings Formula, could be a perfect fit for you. But there's so much confusing and contradictory information out there. How are you supposed to know what's right for you? Well, that's exactly why I created my 90-day program, The Freedom from Cravings Formula. It's a program that's specifically designed for women over 50 who want to get rid of cravings and feel more in control around food, especially sugar and comfort foods. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed to help you get control over cravings so that you can finally live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly and feel confident in your food choices so that you can ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never feel like you're on some kind of a restrictive diet. If you're at the stage of your life where you're finally ready to look after yourself, let's chat. You can hop on a free clarity call with me at any time by going to aftersugarclub.com and clicking on the big green button, Schedule a Clarity Call. We'll have a quick 30-minute one-on-one chat to see if the Freedom from Cravings Formula 90-day program is a good fit for you. So go to aftersugarclub.com. Speak soon. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.